Hello everyone. So today I will present you in this talk the last work of the quantum fluid of light team from the Kassler-Bossal laboratory concerning our experimental study of dark solitons in polyton fluid. So the topic of this talk is solitons pattern and stationary arrays of vertex streets in a polyton superfluid. So first of all, what is our polytonic device? For all the experiments that I'm going to show you, we used the same planar semiconductor microcavity made with 3 indium gallium arsenic quantum wells placed between 2 gallium arsenic, aluminum arsenic Bragg mirrors here. We inject the polyton fluid into it with a continuous and quasi-resonant driving field. So all the fluid picture in this talk have been taken in a steady state regime. And we are slightly blue detuned with respect to the lower polyton branch, as you can see here. So typically, the detuning is around 0.1 millielectronvolt. So now that you know what is our system, what do we call the dark solitons that we seek to study in such 2D polyton fluids? So solitons, which have been observed in a wide diversity of nonlinear media, are localized and stable collective excitation resulting from the balance between the diffraction and the nonlinear effects of such media. In the case of 2D polyton fluids, they take the shape you can see here. So they are 1D elongated density dips into the fluid, coinciding with the pi phase jump orthogonal to the axis. So in the case of repulsive interaction, as for polariton, we have therefore dark solitons. So most of the team's work during the last year has been dedicated to the study of these dark solitons. And here in particular, you have one of our first historical observation of the spontaneous generation in the wake of a structural defect of an oblique dark soliton. So how does it work? We inject the polaritons upstream of a structural defect at resonance in order to let the phase free to evolve in this part of the cavity. So in order to see the solitons propagate, we cannot directly inject the polyton fluid here. So downstream of the defect, we cut the laser beam with a razor blade. So all the polariton in this region of the cavity can only originate from the fluid flow upstream of the defect, flow which is fixed by the inclination angle between the laser beam and the cavity plane. Okay, so we have a flow in this direction. Around the defect, the speed of the flow will locally exceed the speed of sound, so we will have some superfluid regime breakdowns. And because of this breakdown, we will generate here a dark soliton pair. So the propagation distance of these solitons is of the order of few tenths micrometer, distance which is limited by the short lifetime of polaritons. In our case, it is equal to 15 picoseconds. So here you have the first major drawback of our soliton of this first solitons generation technique. We cannot really study the propagation of these solitons at macroscopic scales. Furthermore, we have to use a structural defect, so we can only see this soliton at point of the cavity where there is some structural defect. So for limited ranges, we can study them only for limited ranges of parameters. So now, in order to overcome these two limitations, we can exploit the polyton B-stability properties. So with the quasi-resonant excitation, like here, the fluid density can be in a B-stable state. So if we plot the fluid density with respect to the driving field power, you can see here a hysteresis loop, which is the B-stability of our nonlinear medium. In the B-stable regime, the fluid density can be either high or low. And furthermore, we discovered in the group that in this regime, the phase of the fluid is free to evolve. It is no longer fixed by that of the driving field. So we can exploit this particular property in order to inject into the cavity a high density fluid at a macroscopic scales, while having some solitons able to propagate freely into it. So this is for the B-stable regime. And here we are in the high power regime, where again, the phase of the fluid is fixed by that of the driving field. So now we want to overcome the limitation due to the use of a structural defect. So we have developed in the last year in the team a new all-optical solitons imprinting technique, allowing us to inject solitons at any point of the cavity. So how does it work? We apply to the cavity a large laser beam of 200 microns radius. Its center is in the high power regime, and we modulate its phase with a spatial light modulator, an SLM, in which we have applied this phase pattern. So two phase jump of pi we have here, and that we have also here. So because in the center of the spot, we are in the high power regime, the corresponding fluid area will inherit these two pi phase jump. And so we will initiate, by doing so, in the fluid, the generation of two dark solitons, as you can see here, which for the moment don't propagate. So now we want this dark solitons pair to be able to propagate all along the fluid. So it is first necessary to release this part of the cavity from the phase constraint of the driving phase. So we put the outside area of the laser spot into the B-stable regime where the phase is free to evolve. Then we apply a supersonic flow in this direction. And as you can see now, the dark solitons pair propagate all along the flow, and this at a propagation distance of 200 microns, the size of the laser spot. So we have overcome the short distance limitation due to the short lifetime of polaritons. And now we can easily study the free propagation of the soliton and furthermore their interactions. So in order to study these soliton-soliton interactions, we look at the free propagation of dark solitons pair for different initial separation distances. So this is what we do in this data set, where the separation distance between the two imprinted phase jump decreases for the first to the last picture. So here, by following the flow, you can see that first, the solitons tend to move closer to each other here, before lining up here at the same separation distance. Then, surprisingly, they continue to propagate parallel to each other. So we have no more oblique soliton, as it was the case for the structural defect experiment. So this unconventional bonding behavior can be explained by the balance between the two forces. So first, conventional forces, which is due to the soliton-soliton repulsive interaction. And the second one, which is due to a density gradient between the inner part of the solitons pair and the rest of the fluid. So these forces tend to move closer to each other. Okay, so here you have the density map, the numerical simulation corresponding to this experiment. And as you can see, the simulation and the experiment are in a good agreement. All these results have been quantitatively summarized in the graph here, the graph you have here, where we have plotted the separation distance of the solitons to their position inside the cavity. Each color corresponds to one different initial propagation separation distance. And as you can see, whatever this initial separation distance, at the end, all the solitons tend to equilibrium separation distance of 5 micrometers. The surprising results that we tried to investigate by changing the healing length of the fluid, on which depends the soliton width. So to do this, we change several hydrodynamic parameters changes which have been summarized in the Mach number you have here. So here we plot the equilibrium separation distance with respect to the Mach number. You can see, whatever the Mach number, this equilibrium separation distance is kept constant. Okay, so then we tried to, we haven't shown so far, the dissipation. So because KBT, we have done this analysis numerically. So here we plot the equilibrium separation distance with respect to the decay rate of polariton. In red, you have the numerical data point, and in blue, you have the experimental point corresponding to our cavity decay rate. And as you can see now, the separation distance decreases as the decay rate increases. So by increasing we decrease the polariton population in between the solitons. So we increase the density gradient between these parts. So the force which tends to move the solitons closer to each other is even stronger. And so the equilibrium separation distance decreases. So this analysis reveals that these solitons parallel alignment and this equilibrium separation distance are linked to the dissipative nature of the polariton fluid. And this experiment is typical of what we can study with such solitons imprinting. So this imprinting technique is flexible enough to study with it as the soliton instabilities. So in this last part of the talk, I will move on to a last study concerning the snake instabilities. So this work has been done in collaboration with the Photon2 team from the Pascal Institute in Clermont-Ferrand, which has done all the theory concerning this experiment, theory which has been explained to you by Sergey in the previous talk. So all the solitons that I have shown you so far were embedded into a supersonic flow. Because of this supersonic flow, the snake instabilities were washed away, so we couldn't see them. Normally, without flow and in a 2D environment, solitons are by nature decay into vortex-anti-vortex arrays, as you can see here. So here you have a vortex. So in order to study these snake instabilities, we need to suppress the flow experiment. So we need to change a little our imprinting technique. So a new technique consists in digging into the fluid a confinement potential. So this confinement potential has the shape of a 1D low density channel here between two high density walls. So for given channel and density and the walls density, we can make appear inside this channel a dark soliton pair. So now we inject the proton at k equals 0, so there is no more flow. And because there is no more flow, these solitons are now sensitive with respect to transverse instabilities. So as soon as they are generated, they will decay into vortex-anti-vortex arrays, as you can see here. The distribution of these vortex is frozen by the walls of the channel, so we can easily study them in regime with low temporal resolution devices. So this new imprinting technique differs a little from the previous one. Now, instead of modulating the phase of the laser, we modulate its intensity, still using an SLM. We dig into a top hat profile, a low intensity channel, which will produce our confinement potential. And this pumping scheme is flexible enough to study with it a different channel shape and dimension, as you will see. And furthermore, we can easily tune the relative density between the channel and the wall in order to see different instability modes. Okay, so here you have one of our first observation of the snake instabilities in the proton fluid. So we imprint inside a 1D vertical channel. Its lower end is closed by a third horizontal wall, while its upper end is linked to the low density non part of the cavity at the edge of the laser spot here. So as you can see, by following the channel, a dark soliton pair propagate and decays into vortex-anti-vortex arrays only in the lower end. You see this snake instabilities only in this part. The confinement induced by the three walls we have only in this part of the channel. Okay, so we can then easily map these instabilities, this vortex-anti-vortex pattern by looking at the phase here, in which you can easily find the position of the vortex cores. Okay, so after this experiment, we try to change the number of solitons we generate in our proton fluid. So to do this, we change the channel width, and as you can see here, we have successively 2, 4, and 6 solitons. So we have an even number of solitons in order to preserve the phase between the two high density walls here and here. This phase is fixed by that of the driving field. So if now we put two high density walls in a phase opposition, we will generate an odd number of solitons here. So 1, 3, and 5 solitons successively, still depending on the channel width. Okay. So now that we know that we are able to generate solitons and that we can easily see their instabilities, I will show you that we can tune also this instability pattern. So here we imprint into the fluid a 1D low density channel. This time it is closed at its both ends by a third horizontal wall in order to increase the confinement induced by the wall, so to increase the freezing of the vortex-anti-vortex pairs. So from the first to the last picture, we increase the channel density. And you can see that by doing so, if you look at the two first picture, we change the vortex-anti-vortex distribution. So we excite different instability modes. And furthermore, we change the number of vortices we inject inside the channel. So here we have 8 vortex pairs, and here we have 10 vortex pairs. So by increasing the channel density, we decrease the healing length of the fluid inside the channel. So we reduce the vortex core size, and so we can inject more vortex inside our channel until we reach a density critical value that I call NC. above which the wall of the containment potential are no longer fixed. So the channel close, and consequently, the solitons disappear. This critical density will depend on the channel shape. Here, for example, a closed channel will have a critical density value lower than that of an open channel. Now we can exploit this difference in order to solve analog maze in our fluid. So what we call an analog maze is a set of connected closed channels, here, here, and one open channel. The three closed channels represent the dead ends of the maze, while the open channel is the solution path of the maze. So we tried to reproduce very basically such a maze in our Polar-Electron fluid by imprinting into it a cross shape. So this cross shape is made of one vertical channel closed at its both ends. So we have here and here two dead ends, and one open channel, so an horizontal open channel, which is the solution path of the maze. So I call NCO and NCC the critical density value of the open channel and the closed channel. So now we tune the density injected inside this channel. So as you can see, when this density is below the two critical density values, we have solitons in all the parts of the cross. So if now we slightly increase the channel density, sorry, 2 minutes. So okay, if now we slightly increase the channel density such that it is between the critical density value of the closed channel and the critical density value of the open channel, you can see that we have only solitons which propagate throughout the horizontal channel. So throughout the solution path of the maze. So we solve the maze. So this is the very first, very basic example of the realization of a maze solving machine in our Polar-Electron fluid. Okay. So to conclude, I have shown you in this talk the design of an non-optical long-range solitons imprinting method, with which we study the free propagation of dark solitons per at macroscopic scales. We have revealed in this study the parallel alignment of these solitons pair linked to the dissipative nature of polaritons. Then I have shown you that by digging a containment potential in the fluid, we can study the snake instabilities. And then I have presented to you a very first experimental realization of an analog maze into the Polar-Electron fluid. So we will use in the future these new imprinting techniques in order to study the collision between several solitons and to realize quantitative solitons turbulence studies. And of course, we will work on the realization of more complex mazes. So thank you for your attention, and if you have questions.
Thank you for a very nice talk. Questions, please? Can you please, what is the role of the polarization in all this very nice story that you told us?
The polarization?
Yes.
We don't really look at the dependence of this experiment with the polarization. We work only with a circular, with one polarization, so I don't really know.
So you don't expect any qualitative changes if you will, for example, use linear polarized pump?
Maybe, I don't know.
Okay. Dr. Kanyakhin, please.
Okay. My question was about the first part on the studying the separation distance between the solitons on the value of losses. The next slide, maybe you really next slide, please.
Yeah.
So how did you control the losses?
Only a numerical experiment. We haven't do this experimentally because we have only one cavity. So this.
Okay. So red points are the numerical data, and blue point is the good correspondence between simulation and experiment. And maybe it is possible to find in one cavity some various places when you can really track this dependence experimentally. Well, this is a semi-question, semi-proposal, maybe. Well, again, thanks a lot for your talk.
Okay.
Any more questions? Guillaume?
Just to maybe say a word about polarization. So indeed, it was fully neglected by both theoretically and experimentally. In the experiment, I think since it's a pump relatively strongly circularly polarized, then okay, the self-trapping or the self-induced Zeeman splitting is larger than polarization splitting typically. So okay, there is not too much problem with that, but certainly there are some interesting effects which could occur doing slightly differently and playing with polarization splittings.
Yes. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, so if there are no questions, I think we can close this session. Thank you for all the speakers, and it is my pleasure to give word